So the format, the structure for the show is we'll do introductions. In the future, they won't be as lengthy as this episode's introductions. But we'll do our basic introduction. We'll dive into the bulk of each episode will be a deep dive into a specific religion. Like I said, we're going to do Sikhism today. And then we're going to do the Evangelical Debunk, which is the fun stuff, right? And we have a great, what was the title of the video we had? Oh my God, it was so good that we have picked out that Father Fury.
Yes.
It's Angels Will Remove Every Wicked Ballot.
Absolutely.
Hey fam, welcome to Punks for Progress, introductory episode of Religions and the Left with Father Fury and Reverend Aaron. Welcome, Father Fury.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So, why would leftists want to talk about religions? Are we here to just, make everybody into religious robots? Is that what we're doing here?
Well, I thought that's why we were here. We were, this was kind of a brainwashing and conversion show that we were going to start. No?
Not what I do.
Right.
I'm not into that. No. So, okay.
No.
Cool.
Just kidding. Just kidding. No, fuck that. No, I think the one of the most important things for those of us that see religion and just get it away from me, America, where a lot of our audience is, we are haunted by specifically a weird puritanical brand of Christianity, and it informs every move that is in the far right in this country, and it gets utilized throughout other countries as well with their far right movements. And so, if the idea of learning about religion for religion's sake isn't really appealing to you, what could be really appealing is what better way to kind of understand and know where the other people are coming from and how they're kind of utilizing these things to inform their choices than by learning a little bit about religion itself. And I think that without hogging up all the air in this room, is that the left needs to be a big tent. And I think that to exclude people that I wouldn't necessarily say are religious, but those that are that have faiths or belief systems or ideas in a higher power, I think that to exclude those folks would be a detriment to ourselves as a movement and as a unified front against fascism, oppression, and tyranny.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, of course. It's so obvious. But, so I think three things. So first of all, I should probably say, before we move on any further, what we're going to kind of do with this each month. So each month we're going to pick a specific religion or cult or philosophy or different ideology and just kind of dissect its history, its foundations, how it was formed, and then how it's manifested in modern times, if it's a religion that still exists or not. And then we'll kind of reflect on it as leftists and so on. For the record, this episode, we're going to be discussing Sikhism. But in terms of why I think this is relevant for leftists, a huge cornerstone of modern leftism is the struggle for radical inclusion and diversity, and to be diverse and to radically include involves understanding where people come from. So the far right and evangelicals they like to say all the time, we're a Christian nation. And we laugh at that because it's ridiculous. We know that the founding fathers were actually far more interested in the ideas of the Enlightenment. They were reading Locke and Rousseau and Voltaire. And they knew the Bible, but this was most assuredly not, our Constitution is not a Christian document. It is very much an enlightenment document. But with that said, there is truth to this notion that we are a sort of a Christian nation. Now, bear with me in that. So, depending on where you're from in the world, your worldview is probably informed by one religion or another, or your rejection of one specific religion or another. Now, in the West, foundationally, the first religion that we're introduced to that builds the foundations of most of our worldviews is Christianity. Absolutely. One version or another, whether it's Catholicism or Protestantism. And even Satanists will tell you, true Satanists will tell you gladly that their religion is an ultimate rejection of Christianity, right? And so we, in that way, Father Fury and I, Reverend Aaron, both are Christian. Okay. Now, someone who, say, is from Turkey and was born and raised in Turkey, someone who comes to mind is Cenk Uygur. Okay. So he's originally from Turkey. He's an atheist. He'll tell you all day long he's an atheist, but he'll also tell you, I'm a Muslim. Now, why does he say that? He's not practicing Islam. He's not, because he's the first religion that built the foundations of his spiritual worldview was some type of interpretation of Islam, because that was the predominant prevailing religion within his community in Turkey, right? Of course! So he is someone who has rejected Islam as a core tenet of his worldview, which is very different than someone like me who rejected evangelicalism. Yeah. So now, and I'll apply that to whether you're from India and maybe you have Hindu foundations, or like what we're going to discuss a little bit in greater detail down the road here tonight is Sikhism. Or so I think it's important, if we want to understand the diverse nature of the human condition and we want to include people from various and varied walks of life, it's best to have at least a basic understanding of the things that motivate what makes them diverse, right? As opposed to saying some stupid ass ignorant shit at the party that inadvertently offends that person.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think we're not going to do deep dives into different religions on this show. We're going to hopefully give you a basic, factual, less than 101 understanding, right? and discuss what we think about it. And we're going to learn about new religions and ideas, Father Fury and I, as we go through these series. And so I'm just really excited. And that's why I think it's important. But so the structure for the show is we'll do introductions. In the future, they won't be as lengthy as this episode's introductions. But we'll do our basic introduction. We'll dive into the bulk of each episode will be a deep dive into a specific religion. Like I said, we're going to do Sikhism today. And then we're going to do the Evangelical Debunk, which is the fun stuff, right? And we have a great, what was the title of the video we had? Oh my God, it was so good that we have picked out that Father Fury.
Yes.
It's Angels Will Remove Every Wicked Ballot.
Absolutely.
The Evangelical Debunk. So that'll just be us having fun, cold watching a video from some evangelical and explaining why what they're saying is not biblical. And I don't know, maybe what was I saying earlier, that even if it is biblical, why that might be problematic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the future, if folks have a video that they would like us to debunk, I would, send them in. I think that would be fun.
Oh, I'm totally open to that, and that brings me to what the third section will be, which is ostensibly we'll take questions from the audience about whatever religions we've discussed, or and suggestions for evangelicals to debunk. There's so much. It's not just, oh, look at how stupid and wrong this evangelical is. It's really look at how they're actually ignoring the tenets of the scripture they purport to believe in so wholeheartedly,
Oh yeah.
right? And so the reason I think you maybe this leads us to why I think you and I would be kind of good at doing that is so what I wanted to do today in our lengthy introduction is we're both going to kind of take an opportunity to explain specifically for us personally why we would want to do a podcast together called Religions in the Left. So, um, Father Fury, if you want to take it from here and just kind of whatever
Yeah.
your motivation and what got you excited to do this, I don't know, and then I'll give my description, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, first off, first and foremost, the opportunity to do a podcast with you, Reverend Aaron, is rad as hell. So,
Ditto.
you
Back
and
at you.
aw, thanks, man. And I think we have been looking for kind of something to work with and collaborate together on, and you had this fantastic idea. And so it appealed to me. And I guess the reason that it appeals to me is that, for those that don't know, Father Fury, yeah, it's tongue in cheek, name for my musical and artistic, career. But, there's actually a little bit of a truth behind it. I am an ordained priest, within the Progressive Episcopal Church, and I have a doctorate in theology and religious studies. And that's not like a doctorate at one of the
Moody's,
yes, at Moody
not Pat
Bible, yeah,
Robertson's college.
yes. I have a doctorate in truthology.
From PragerU.
From PragerU. Oh my gosh. We need to create an entire different podcast where we just debunk all of their little videos. Good God. If that doesn't give us a heart attack first just from listening to their bullshit. But, I have to say that getting my doctorate and learning about not just the Christian scriptures and the Jewish texts from where the Christian scriptures sprang forth from, but having a broader understanding of varied and multiple different belief systems, religions, different sects. In each of those different religions and belief systems, it kind of makes you understand that we can either go, man, I am really lucky to have been born in this place at this time to where I was brought up in the right religion that is God ordained, or we can think that maybe there's something to all of these faiths, or maybe this stuff is has a hint of truth in it, and then the rest is by man. We kind of just went with it and rolled with it, and we see that there are things that are good and things that are bad in all of these different faiths and religions, and even in the texts that we revere as holy. And so I think being able to do that and also bring it to an audience that, let's be honest, we as leftists bristle at the thought of religion and the thought of spirituality. But I think that if we don't have that kind of spiritual understanding and integration to an extent, I think that we have the potential to burn out quick. And I'm not saying that we need to have the power and faith of Jesus within us. No. Whatever gets you through the day. But I think that even if we can just come together and see that there is oneness within each of us, and if we see that as divinity, that we have a kindred spirit among all of us, and we want to make that kindred spirit flourish so that it is a better world for all of us. I think then we can find that common ground, and I think being able to have that understanding of all the different faiths and religions that we're going to go through, the ones that maybe are misunderstood, and also those that get quoted a lot, well, actually misquoted a lot, and trumpeted as the ultimate truth and the ultimate morality and ethic that we should aspire to. I think that having a better understanding of what these things actually say and what they're actually about, why they wrote them, who wrote them, the history behind those things, it's going to help us to be better equipped to not only tackle the nonsense that goes on from the right, but also maybe inform some of those that may be teetering and are like, well, I was grown up, I was raised and grown up as a evangelical Christian, and that's all I know. Well, yeah, but here's a better way of learning and understanding this, and so we can bridge that gap and maybe bring some folks over to this understanding where we're at.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it. I know, like, there when I specifically with Sikhism, and this will lead me to why I wanted to do a podcast like this too. But when I first learned about it from when I took a world religions class over 10 years ago, and really finally learning the distinction between telling the difference of the turban, which I was ignorant. I made the mistake of assuming Sikhs were Muslims, right? And when I understood that difference, it made me excited to want, like, when I was around the first Sikh person that's so disconnected and so very white and, and Western American, to be like, oh my gosh, a real Sikh is, and I understand it. But again, my point being is that there was that little bit of excitement of like, I'm not ignorant to what you are anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean you go out and be like, act like you can relate to them all of a sudden, don't take here. This is the strongest advice I would give for our podcast is please don't take what you're going to learn from us and think that you can go out and then start having long, lengthy conversations with people who are born and raised under these religions that we're just going to scratch the surface of. Okay. So for me,
the like the equivalent of ordering in Spanish at a Mexican restaurant after you've had maybe 3 classes of Spanish as a second language. Yeah,
exactly. Let's not do the equivalent of that, or even that specifically ever. Now, I have a background in evangelical, in the Foursquare, primarily a little bit of Assembly of God. My father was ordained, but in Foursquare for a number of years. So it's definitely a spirit-filled, born again baptism in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of tongues and prophecy in the church. And this was a regular activity in the church that I grew up in. I became a punk rocker very early in my life. I was in the 4th grade when I said I want to be this thing that I really didn't understand yet. That was like 1980. I had an aunt and uncle that were into it, and like legitimately like into the New York Dolls and Ramones and their early stuff. And I was really into that. Of course, I didn't understand it in 4th grade in 1980, but I knew that's what I wanted to be. And it was really a couple years later when my dad found Jesus. Okay. And then eventually became a pastor. And so I had a very adversarial relationship with it early on, because by the time he was all in, I was all in as a punk rocker. Like by the time he was ready to be a pastor, I knew punk rock and I was into it. Right. And so we clashed. But at one point, my dad started taking in houseless people and people right out of the joint. And not for money. He wasn't a grifting piece of shit. This was legitimately about, hey, this Sermon on the Mount tells me that this is what I need to be doing, is helping the stranger and helping the houseless and helping the prisoner. And he started doing it. And I had immense respect for my father for doing that. And I became centrally involved in his church as a direct result of him making that move. And for a number of years, we took in people right out of the street and out of the prison, and they were living in our home. women's bunks, men bunks. Um, and that had a lasting, obvious effect on me. I've been since have done a lot of work with various food not bombs over the years. And anyway, now ultimately, though, I rejected evangelicalism. And for reasons that I don't need to get into. Have you heard the religion? Have you looked into it? Yeah. It's easy to reject, especially when you get to know it, and especially if you start really studying. I have a Strong's Concordance. If people don't know what a Strong's Concordance is, I know you do, Fury, but I think you'll like mine. It's old.
Let's see this. Oh, wow.
Okay, so what this is?
Exhaustive concordance.
It's the exhaustive, yes, concordance of the Bible. So it's every word and phrase in the Bible. You look it up here, sort of like a dictionary, and it'll tell you where it is. This is every pastor has this. This is an invaluable tool, and it's updated. This is an older one, but I just love it because it's hardbound and beautiful. But that's, if you really want to just go beyond what some pastor is saying, I did that. And then it ultimately led to me rejecting it. But I can understand, there's a wonderful tradition in Christianity, especially like in the Black churches, what Martin Luther King comes out of. And so it's not all garbage and racism and, grifting crap. And if that can be said, if Christianity can encompass those polars, well, don't other religions, and what can learning about those religions, I feel like a far more enriched person because of my experiences with evangelicalism and seeing good sides of it and bad sides of it. When my father was doing his ministry, the vast majority of the people he came in contact in the evangelical community shit on him. They were just awful to him. Why? Because he was doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not fucking doing it, right? So again, with that said, understanding, at least on some basic level, other religions and knowing that they have that level of diversity, and I just think is fascinating, and just again will just make me a richer person, right? As opposed to just outright rejecting things. I don't reject Kitty at all. What's your cat name?
That is Abby. We've got two cats. Abby is the oldest, and then we have Loki, who is our newest cat, and that cat lives up to its name. It is it's truly, truly a cat of mischief. So
my cat's name is Hell Maggot, but I mostly just call him Giddy.
I love it.
So that's a basic introduction, and I guess I would say that I look forward to learning about the basics of new religions with you, Father Fury. Gosh, there's so many possibilities and options out there, and we're going to discuss things that him and I already have experience with and may have some basic understandings, but I'm really looking forward to things that I don't know anything about at all, and diving into it, so should we do that maybe?
Let's dig deep, man.
All right. So we have already made very clear that today's subject, first main topic, the big religion and the religions in the left with Father Fury and Reverend Aaron, is Sikhism. So what I'm going to do is there's only a few pages. I'm going to read from this. This is Exploring World's Religions, Tradition, Challenge, and Change by Michael Malloy. This was 5th edition. This is about 10 years old, this edition. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through it. And there's only a few pages that I'm going to read from. Gives you the basic background, foundations, and structure of what Sikhism is. And I think it's really fascinating. So I'm going to go ahead and read. We'll read a few little sections of it, and then we'll stop here and there. And and feel free to stop me anytime. Hey, hold on, Aaron. And if you have any thoughts or things that you really want to jump in before you forget. But let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of reading that we'll break up into sections. So it's not just, and thus they said, and followed in the same place. And remember when they all bowed down. And we remembered who begat and who begat and who begat. Okay, so Sikhism, right? Now, look, a lot of Sikhs, especially in the wake of 9/11, experienced some pretty hardcore discrimination and terrorism and violence, mostly from white presenting, males.
Oh, yes.
With some twisted version of Jesus in their head. And Sikhs are not the same thing as Islam, but it incorporates elements of it. So, all right. So Sikhism, background. Sikhism grew up in an area called the Punjab, which today is part of northwestern India and eastern Pakistan. This is crucial, I think, in understanding of a lot of different religions from this time. Actually, let me back up. Before we get into Sikhism, you should understand it in its historic tradition. So in this region, northern India and in Pakistan and what's now Pakistan, Afghanistan, these regions, the Vedism was the predominant religion, right? Until religions like Jainism, which is a precursor to Sikhism, and Buddhism kind of manifest out of this sort of northern India region, southern Asia, right? Which is, that regional thing is very, very crucial and important in understanding Sikhism, because it really is not only ideologically, but geographically a mixture of these Hinduism and Jainism and Buddhism mixed with Islam. And that is, when you look at the map, of the northern half of India. So Jainism is sort of in the eastern side of, northeastern side of India, whereas Sikhism is in the northwestern region, which borders on Pakistan, which is where you start getting into a more Muslim population, right? I just think that's fascinating that the geography played such a crucial role in the, formation of these various beliefs in the post-Vedic era, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway.
Yeah, and it's great how we can kind of, even just within this first few minutes of the first episode, we see how various religions inform other religions, and they cross-pollinate. That nothing is isolated and invented just in the dark. So,
word. Right. So, although the region has a long history of religious conflict between Hindus and Muslims, it is also an area in which significant attempts have been made to bridge division and misunderstanding. It is not surprising, then, that Sikhism, nurtured in the midst of conflict and resolution, exhibits elements reminiscent of both groups. It is hard to imagine two religions more divergent than Hinduism and Islam. Hinduism recognizes many gods, while Islam recognizes only one. Hinduism cherishes religious images, whereas Islam prohibits them. And Hinduism promotes vegetarianism, but Islam, although it has dietary restrictions, allows the killing and eating of many animals, including cows. Both religions, though, share an appreciation for religious devotion and value the attainment of mystical consciousness. In Hinduism, these traditions have been cultivated by the devotees of Bhakti Yoga, and in Islam, they have been cultivated by Sufis. Some scholars maintain that Sufism, in fact, derived much earlier inspiration from Hinduism. Both religions also recognize the important role of a spiritual master, a guru or a sheikh. And while Islam is known for its rejection of images, Some Hindus have also spoken against an exaggerated love of images. Before Sikhism began, there were already people called Sants or Sants, S-A-N-T-S, who practice a spirituality that drew from both religions and that sought to overcome religious divisions. The greatest exponent of the Sant tradition was the mystic Kabir from 1440 to 1518, whose poetry has had enormous influence in India. It is from this interest in a mystical spirituality beyond the restrictions of any one religion that Sikhism emerged, and it was in the Punjab, where two often opposing religions collided, that the founder of a new religion was born. Any thoughts, or should I continue reading?
Please keep going. That's very good. I think before we, I said keep going, but before we, before we keep going, I think that it's uh, it's a beautiful thing to see that you have these competing ideologies and theologies here between Hinduism and Islam, and you had a group of people that began to see the beauty or the divinity, the divine, within both of these belief systems and incorporated what they saw the best out of each of those for themselves and put it together into what would later become.
Sikhism, right? And I should say so, not to poop on the party,
Mm-hmm.
but in political terms, we get really worried about both sidesism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's not always common ground,
Absolutely.
right? Because there's no common ground with fascists, right? If you're a leftist, you do not, listen to Jimmy Dore and then go out and hang out with Boogaloo Boys.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that leftists do, right? Um, but with that said, uh, I think there's something to be respected in this want for reconciliation, right? Isn't that ultimately, I think, what they're trying? They're like, okay, here's all these diverse ideas that in many ways are at odds, right? And they're talking about the importance of imagery and idolatry within the Hindu tradition, and but the radical prohibition of that under Islam, right? Um, and so this attempt to, I think it's not both sidesism. I
Yeah.
think it's not. I think this is very distinctly different, and I like this idea again of the attempt to reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
What's motivating you?
Yeah.
And I think there's something honorable in that.
I concur. Yeah, I think that having that having that understanding that, because I think that theologies like this, it's different per se than from a perspective of or an ideology that is competing with, hey, we think that everyone should be able to, you know, there will be conflict, of course, but we should learn to coexist and respect one another. And then you have the other ideology that no, only people like me that look like me should exist and everybody else should be exterminated. Uh, there is no common ground there,
Right.
none whatsoever to be had. But when you have a theology or a belief system to where it's we're trying to find this path to, whether you want to call it divinity, God, or an enlightenment, to have that understanding where we are all one people, and you're like, okay, I see that the people on this belief system and the people on this belief system have some really great ideas, and I have learned a lot from this, but there are some things with this belief system that maybe doesn't work for me. It's not right for me. And the same with this one. But what if I utilized what I see as the best of these worlds, of these belief systems, and were able to put it into a practice and a way of life for me? And then you have more that kind of see this and like, hey, yeah, I think that's great. And then this new belief system, this new sect that actually becomes a religion is given birth, and it's that commonality, that common ground, and trying to find that best of both worlds type of thing that you were talking about.
And like I'm very, very, especially as an anarchist,
Mm-hmm.
very apprehensive towards absolutes,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, there is no belief structure that, in my estimation, that has ever been constructed by humans that is flawless. They are all flawed, in my
Oh
estimation.
yeah.
Okay. I have yet to find a single belief structure or system or philosophy that doesn't have flaws within it. But with that said, then what's the motivation? Why do religions happen? Well, it's human beings trying to figure out what the fuck is going on this planet. Like, where the fuck do I fit? What am I? What does everything mean really? And in an earnest search for that, I think is definitely to be respected, and we can glean some really crucially important things because there's so what we don't understand clearly far outweighs what we do. We are a speck of fucking nothing in a vast fucking endless universe. So every avenue of search for truth and meaning in some way has to glean something useful, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get into Nanak, shall we? Nanak and the origins of Sikhism, not the oranges of Sikhism.
That's good, because though I do respect not just the fruit, but the color orange, I think that maybe in this particular text here, that we really make sure that we don't mistranslate it, as is often done with holy books, to that it is the origins and not the oranges.
Okay. Nanak and the origins of Sikhism. The founder of Sikhism, Nanak, was born in 1469 in what is today Pakistan. He grew up in a Hindu family, married, had 2 children, and held several jobs, first as a herder, then as a clerical assistant to a sultan. Because Nanak's life as a householder was accompanied by a strong religious interest, he and a Muslim friend named Mardana, created a devotional association and met in the evenings to sing hymns and to discuss religious ideas. We do songs. We've done songs together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're here discussing religious ideas.
What?
It's almost like we're Nanak and Mardana.
Hey, you never know. You heard it here first, folks.
We might even be Narcissus and Goldman, but that's for another discussion.
Like that. We can definitely do that.
So one day, Nanak had an experience so powerful that he saw it as a revelation. After bathing and performing religious ablutions in a nearby river, Nanak went into the adjacent forest and did not re-emerge for 3 days. During the time, he felt himself taken into the divine presence. He would later say that he had experienced God directly. This shattering experience revealed to him that there is but one God, beyond all human names and conceptions. Like that. Nanak referred to the fundamental divine reality as the true name, signifying that all names and terms that are applied to God are limited because the divine is beyond all human conception. Let me read that again. Signifying that all names and terms that are applied to God are limited because the divine is beyond all human conception. Nanak now understood that Hindus and Muslims worshipped the same God, Sikh, S-I-C, Sikh. It's a little presumptuous, I think, in that wording, but Nanak now understood that Hindus and Muslims worship the same God and that a distinction between the 2 religions was mistaken. Nanak became famous for insisting that when the true name of God is experienced rather than just talked about, there is no Hindu and there is no Muslim. Nanak's revelation is similar to stories of the life-changing prophetic calls of Isaiah, Zarathustra, and Muhammad. His revelatory experience resolved his earlier doubts and was the great turning point of his life. Having decided to spread his new understanding, Nanak left his family and home, accompanied by his friend Mardana. As homeless wanderers, they visited holy sites throughout northern India. Wherever they went, Nanak preached and sought disciples, which is the meaning of the word Sikh. disciple. As a part of his preaching, Nanak sang devotional songs with Mardana, who was from a social class of musicians, played musical accompaniment. He played songs with him.
Gotcha.
Particularly starting was Nanak's style of clothing, which deliberately blended Hindu and Muslim elements. He wore the Hindu dhoti, a cloth drawn up between the legs to form pants, along with an orange Muslim coat and Muslim cap. He adorned his forehead with Hindu religious markings. The combination of elements was an important prophetic statement, predictably causing consternation among both Hindus and Muslims. Nanak and Mardana continued their devotional teaching together until Mardana's death in the late 60s. Not long after, when Nanak sensed his own end approaching, he passed on his authority and work to a chosen disciple. He died in 1539 at age 70. Nanak is commonly called Guru Nanak and is recognized as the first of a line of 10 Sikh gurus or spiritual teachers. Should I stop there? And do you have some thoughts on that, or should I continue?
Yeah, I think that it's such a cool thing that he sees the oneness that is in these two different separate faiths, and that it's mistaken that they are called Hinduism and Islam because they are one faith. And I think that if we kind of like pull out the lens a little bit farther, then we see that there are so many similar teachings and understandings within all faiths about our understanding of our nature as human beings and what we are charged to do with here while we have breath in our lungs, with the world around us and with one another. And I think that being able to have that kind of aha moment is such a beautiful thing that people that really do study and really do kind of delve deep into theology and different belief systems kind of get this understanding, this gnosis, if you will, that there are some things that they're not interchangeable. They are definitely exclusive to one faith or belief system. But there are so many things within all of them that are very interchangeable, and those are the beautiful nuggets, I think, that we can really hold on to and cling to.
And I think we should also be mindful. I mean, I just see the potential for violence and conflict and war here too. Telling a devout follower of Islam that, nah, bro, Hinduism's legit, and you're Hinduism too. And here's a picture I drew of it.
Yeah,
there could be real problems there,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You know, I mean, and not in any way. I'm not obviously not in any way trying to discredit, you know, the sentiments that you were just expressing. But again, there's that diversity. There's that diversity is not the right word, but the nuance, right? That like, this is bold. This is bold to say that there is no Hindu there and there is no Muslim. That's a bold statement that's gonna fucking piss some people off. It has to have, right? Like I could. I'm not going to walk up to a Muslim and tell him that there is no Muslim, there is no Islam. That would be deeply irresponsible and disrespectful, right?
Oh, concur completely, you know, but I think that that's also what happens when we catch hold of a new idea and that it just kind of hits us with a lightning bolt. Sometimes we can go off half-cocked a little bit and be disrespectful of other people's beliefs or ideas when we don't mean to, per se. And because I definitely wouldn't tell someone that, your faith in Islam is completely wrong because Islam shouldn't exist, or Sikhism shouldn't exist, or Hinduism, Christianity, what have you, shouldn't exist. Do I think that it's a perfect, any of them are perfect in their understanding of God or the divine or what have you? No, not at all. Do they all kind of point to the same path eventually? Sure, absolutely. But I think that it is short sighted for anybody to say that this is wrong and your faith and your belief system is wrong and it's actually should be this, because I think that that's how we have all the different religions and all the different sects within each of these religions that we have today, because yours is wrong and only my understanding and thought process and theology that I've just come up with is the right way. So,
You know, excellent point. And you're going to see in the next page and a half or so, it really touches on, I highlighted a big chunk of it
yeah.
because it was something that I felt I've seen hints of, or the same sentiments manifested in numerous religions, and,
Yeah.
and I think you'll know what I mean when I get to it. So the worldview and teachings of Nanak. Just as Nanak's clothing combined elements of Hinduism and Islam, so too did his worldview, at least on the surface. Earlier commentators spoke of Sikhism merely as a combination of Hindu and Muslim elements, yet Sikhs themselves, and more recent scholars, see Sikhism as an entirely unique religion. They speak of Nanak as having rejected both Islam and Hinduism, and they hold that Sikhism comes from a totally new revelation. Nanak accepted, as does Hinduism, a belief in reincarnation and karma. His view of the human being was similar to that of the Sankhya school of philosophy. That's Sankhya, which views the human being as a composite of body and spirit. Because the body and physical world by nature bind and limit the spirit must overcome physicality as it seeks freedom and absorption in the divine. This process may take lifetimes to accomplish. In spite of Nanak's acceptance of reincarnation and karma, there were other elements of Hinduism that he rejected. From a very early age, for example, he resisted Hindu love of ritual, criticizing it for taking human attention away from God. Similarly, he disdained Hindu polytheism, particularly Hindu devotion to images of various gods and goddesses. It is possible that Nanak's views in this regard were influenced by Islam. Islamic practice also supported Nanak's acceptance of meat eating. Nanak believed that the animal world was created for the use of human beings. According to Nanak's view of God, although God is ultimately beyond personhood, God does have personal qualities, such as knowledge, love, a sense of justice, and compassion. Because of these qualities, God can be approached personally by the individual. In Nanak's view, God is the primary guru. Although Nanak saw himself as God's mouthpiece, he preached that God dwells within each individual and can be contacted within the human heart. Sounds a lot like Gnosticism. Now, that one part. Now, here's the part I highlighted. Despite his emphasis on finding the divine within the individual, Nanak believed that true religion has a strong social responsibility. He criticized both Islam and Hinduism for their deficiencies in helping the poor and the oppressed. In response to his convictions, Nanak organized religious groups called Sangats, which were to offer both worship to God and assistance to fellow human beings. So I thought maybe we could stop there for a second.
Oh, yes.
Maybe you have thoughts.
Oh, my. Yeah. And I think that this is where I think our podcast should come with a disclaimer, that we will tip over some of these sacred things in all of these religions. And I want feedback by any of it. If you are a practitioner of any of these beliefs that we talk, feel free to tell us why we're wrong, because we're two white guys that, yeah, we think we have a decent understanding of things, but what I'm about to say too is that we may think we know stuff, and we may think we have a good grasp about God, about our place in this world, and about what the divine wants from us. And we may think that we have the right answers, but we don't. We don't know shit. you know, we really don't. Um, I like the being a mouthpiece for God. Um, I think that that's a dangerous way of thinking about yourself. That's kind of egotistical in my opinion, and and that's not exclusive to Sikhism by any means. You look at any religion, or you look at any person in almost any religion or sect that is out there today, you're going to have those that feel that they are God's mouthpiece, and that's a dangerous precedence that you're setting forth there, because then you begin to say that whether you mean to or not, when you call yourself God's mouthpiece, you are saying that everything that utters out of your mouth is from God specifically,
And you're declaring the existence of a very specific God as well.
Mhm.
I mean, I have to have respect. I don't label myself as an atheist. I think that there is something beyond our understanding. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, in a nutshell. But deep respect for atheists who would just go, "Oh, you're the personal, actual mouthpiece of the imaginary
Yeah.
Jello blob."
Mhm.
Okay, well, how about you go fuck yourself a lot?
Yeah.
No, I mean, and 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 good luck with that. And if you got a problem with it, strike me down with it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so, but even with someone who believes there is something out there, to presume that there is a human that, um, you, Robert Anton Wilson, I don't know, I'm a huge fan of his, rest in power, Ra, but there's, I can't remember which book it is. He talks about how if you want to understand the universe and God or whatever that is, your brain would have to be as big as the universe
Yes.
to get it. And last I checked, I mean, I got a big head, yo. I got a big old. You got a sizable noggin too,
Oh
my
yeah. Look
friend.
at this.
You do.
Yeah.
Not as big as the universe.
Mhm.
Not as big as the universe. And I imagine even Enoch, he might have been walking around like top heavy as
Yeah.
fuck, you know?
Mhm.
Probably not as big as the universe. But probably not.
I would, again, we weren't back there, and so we don't know, or maybe we do, if reincarnation is a real thing, and I tend to think it is. Maybe we were there, and if we can do maybe some past life regression therapy on our next podcast, we can maybe go back and see and confirm whether or not the size of his head was actually as big as the universe or not. But at this point in time, though I can't confirm it, I will say that I doubt it.
I'm just gonna run with probably not.
Okay, cool.
But what stood out to me too in
Mm-hmm.
that last section, there's a number of things. But that when it came down to it, it's, hey man, look out for the oppressed motherfucker.
Yes.
Right? Hey, maybe these other religions ain't doing enough for poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And this was also, I think it's important to point out at this point, at these religions as a sort of rejection of the Vedics, they are also a rejection of the caste system.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I don't know if it's completely a complete absolute rejection of it, but definitely big leap forward in rejecting the caste system in Buddhism and Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, right? And that's an equalizing thing, and of course, that's the core foundation of Jesus's teaching, the Sermon on the Mount and Beatitudes, right?
Absolutely.
Look out for the prisoner, look out for the stranger, help the homeless, right? Like, and here it is recurring, in the section prior to this in this textbook on Sikhism, it talks about Jainism. And that was a core foundational motivational element of the birth of Jainism
Yeah.
was this look out for the poor people, look out for the people who don't have, look out for the people who are getting shit on.
Yes. Yes. You know, and you see that as a core tenet in so many belief systems that are out there that, you know, maybe there's something to that, despite what you might hear nowadays, especially within evangelical circles.
Something within us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear people talk about, well, humanity, we're a communal species, right? We rely on the interaction of other human beings. It's fundamental to the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tap into that a little bit and you start to see that there's some people who have more at the expense of others who are suffering greatly because of it, like you seek answers for that. Why is that? Why is that happening, man? That's fucked up. How can your God of this religion or that religion or this religion or that religion allow that to happen?
Agreed. Agreed. You know,
Mhm.
and I think that that is, it gets lost when you start having people in power steal the narrative from those that are practitioners of a belief system. Uh, then it gets reversed and it gets flipped around to where, yeah, there might have been something that was said about poor folks, that we should help those, or that we should work to remove injustice. But really, it's more just about believing the right things. And when I mean believe the right things, believe the things that I'm telling you should believe. You know, and we lose the plot gets lost with these faith traditions, especially as they get co-opted by the powerful and the governmental structures that are out there. Um, you know,
And let's be real, the moment that you sort of take that leap and put faith in something that you can't tangibly prove,
mhm.
you now become vulnerable,
Oh yes, of
especially
course.
to the most disgusting and nefarious elements out there that see you as an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
But we shouldn't belittle that person for being willing to take that leap. You know, I often say, you know, in the end, you know, when we get rid of capitalism,
Mhm.
finally, that's when we can start asking the big questions about life. Like we're so hindered from even finding a moment in our fucking wage slave day
Yes.
to go, you know, what is the purpose of life anyway? If anything, you're like, oh, really, dude? Are you really talking about what's the meaning of life? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, good luck on Twitter.
Yeah.
Get on Twitter and start asking, what's the meaning of life?
Mhm.
And you are just going to get just destroyed.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
understandably.
Mhm.
And, you know, because you know, we're two white presenting males, so we have a lot of opportunity and privilege that a lot of others don't have. There are people who are enduring some hardcore fucking shit every
Mhm.
day in and day out that you and I cannot relate to. We only can only hear about and see evidence of all day, every day, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a privilege
Mhm.
to take the time to go, what does the universe mean, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And but ultimately, if we you know, postmodernists, quote unquote, and Derridaists, and you know, especially far right scumbags that want to pervert what postmodernism is.
Yes.
They'll talk about philosophy is dead, and we're at the end of the philosophical tradition. And I think there's some kind of truth to that. I think that the anarchists and even the Marxists and socialism and the critiques of capitalism kind of was the height of the Western. It's kind of it's where we've gone with the Western philosophical tradition.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's over and there's nothing beyond it. What we have ultimately realized is, holy shit, we can't move forward as long as we have this capitalism thing. It is hindering every fucking real search for truth and meaning in the universe. Like you can't, you're not allowed
Mhm.
to even broach it.
Well,
You know, how odd and off the wall and out of the ordinary is this podcast we're doing right now?
oh
And
yeah.
I'm not trying to pat myself on the back and just it, it's almost like there isn't room for these type of discussions. And again, I know you have something you would say, but especially in communities that are truly subjected to real violence and oppression every day, the LGBTQ community, especially the trans community over this last year, and Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was actually going to agree with you. I think that we are in a privileged position to be able to even have an opportunity to create a platform to speak about these things and to have time in our day to talk about and discuss these deep and important things that are about life. And I think that this type of podcast, especially dissecting and going through these different spiritual belief systems, is important because there are so many maligned communities out there that are oppressed actively, that and not just oppression like Elon Musk thinks that he's oppressed because he can't get certain monetization on Twitter at the moment. I'm talking about people that are actually oppressed, people that are beaten, people that are murdered, lynched, people that aren't able to find employment because of who they are and because of what they look like. And this all plays an integral role, not just within these circles, but also because our faith, whether we have we maybe believe in a higher power, or we don't believe in any type of supernatural being or entity out there at all, it is still a theology. And I think that it's all interconnected, and to learn about these things and discuss these things to see where, we think that these leaders and these people that founded this may have gotten some things right, or where they may have gotten some things wrong. It helps us to be better informed and better equipped to counteract some of the oppression and bullshit that goes on within our world around us, especially through the capitalist lens that we find ourselves in.
So let's see. There's really only 2 pages left, and then they get into some like the actual author's like this long anecdotal story that I'm not going to read. But so the next section is the development of Sikhism, right? So we got a little. Now we've kind of got a little bit of the early history. We learned about Nanak and the kind of very basic tenets of the religion. So this is we'll get into the development, how it actually solidifies as a established religion and belief structure. So Sikhism has gone through several stages of development. In its earliest stage, Sikhism was not defined as a distinct religion. It was simply a religious movement that sought to coexist peacefully with other religions. In the next stage, Sikhism was forced to adopt a militant, self-protective stance toward the world, and it took on some of the elements of a more formalized religion, a sacred book, a sacred city, and clearly defined religious practices. After that period of self-definition and consolidation, Sikhism, in its third and final stage, was able to move beyond its land of origin and to make converts elsewhere. Something that reminds me of communism a little bit. That defensiveness, militant defensiveness thing. Anyway, we can return to that. But anyway, the earliest stage was that of the first 4 gurus. Nanak. Now, remember earlier it mentioned that when it talked about the passing of Nanak, they called him the first of 10 gurus, right? So I just wanted to remind the listener of that fact. So the earliest stages was that of the first 4 gurus, Nanak, Angad, Amar Das, and Ram Das. During this period, hymns were written, numerous communities were organized, and a village headquarters was created at Amritsar in northern India. The next stage of consolidation and religious definition began with Guru Arjan, 1563 to 1606, a son of Ram Das. In his role as 5th guru, Arjan built the Golden Temple and its surrounding pond at Amritsar, collecting about 3,000 hymns written by himself and earlier gurus and saints. Arjan created the sacred book of the Sikhs, the Adi Granth. or original collection, because he resolutely resisted attempts by the Muslim Emperor Jahangir to make him adopt Islamic practice. Arjan died of torture. Arjan's son, Har Gobind, steered Sikhism in a more self-defensive direction. In response to his father's persecution, Har Gobind enlisted a bodyguard and an army to protect him and his followers. He adopted the practice of wearing a sword, thus abandoning the Hindu ideal of ahimsa. I ran a record label once called Ahimsa Militia Records.
Oh, that's awesome.
And one of the early songs that I released with my first band, Eversquelch, is Ahimsa. It's on the Food Not Bombs Benefit for Reno Food Not Bombs 7-inch that I released with 6 Weeks Records. It's got Intifada, The Dread, my old band Eversquelch, Scabies. Did I say Intifada from Portland? The Fanatics from Denver, and Bristle from Seattle.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But the ahimsa, I didn't understand at the time. I was ignorant to the notion, the vegetarian elements of ahimsa. Right? It's non-harmful or non-aggressive, or even timid. And I just took that as non-violence and didn't understand that I'm sitting there eating steak and singing songs about ahimsa and didn't realize. See, this is why understanding the basic tenets of things makes you you spend less time with foot and mouth than you might,
Oh yes, and I mean, and that's a great thing for me because that's honestly how I spend the majority of my time. So,
excellent. So, I digress. The growing militancy of evolving Sikhism was successful in averting persecution during the tenure of the next gurus, Har Rai and Harkishan. The 9th guru, Teg Bahadur, however, was imprisoned and decapitated by the Muslim Emperor Aurangzeb, who saw Sikhism as a serious threat to his control. In response, the 10th guru, Gobind Rai, from 1666 to 1708, idealized the sword. Because of his military power, Gobind Rai came to be known as Gobind Singh, or Gobind the Lion. He inaugurated a special military order for men called the Khalsa and devised a ceremony of initiation called the Baptism of the Sword, which involved sprinkling initiates with water that had been stirred with a sword. The Khalsa was open to all castes, for Gobind Singh had ended all caste distinctions among Sikhs, except for male and female.
yeah, I was gonna point that out.
Distinctions, maybe. Every male within the Khalsa took the name Singh, or lion. Every male. So over time, Gobind Singh suffered the deaths of his 4 sons and was left without a successor. Possibly foreseeing his own assassination, he declared that the Adi Granth was to be considered both his successor and the final permanent guru. The sacred book, both in Amritsar and in Sikh temples, or gurdwaras, is therefore treated with the same reverence that would be shown a living guru. As such, it is called Guru Granth Sahib. At the death of Gobind Singh, Sikhism was now clearly defined as a religion with the means to spread beyond its place of origin. So there's only one last section. It's a little brief description of the Sikh scriptures, but I thought maybe that's a good spot to stop and reflect a little.
Absolutely.
Quite a turn, huh?
Yeah.
Quite a turn from the oppressed and the poor into swords and stirring swords and
golden temples.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not stagnant. It's an evolving.
Well, yeah, and I think that, as you and I, as, as scribers to Anarchism, I think that we also see that the birth of great ideas sometimes will, sadly, inevitably, because we're people, uh, create power and infrastructure behind it that serves to um, sustain itself at the expense of others. And so, that's why we have to burn all flags, and when we're done with hoisting this flag up and conquering the oppressor that we're after, then we need to take our own flag down and burn that one too. Because we all have that potential and that inevitability within us at times to become the very thing that we seek to destroy eventually. And so, and I mean, good grief, you look at any religion out there, and I know that we're talking about Sikhism today, and so I want any of our listeners that ascribe to this belief system or have family members. We're not just picking on this one. Well, I'm not specifically just picking on this one because I know that I've been critical of some of this stuff in here, and so it's not a picking or making jabs, because I promise you that as we continue, uh, I will pick apart and
Listen, absolutely. For one, we are allowed to disagree with things that we learn about these things. You, as a listener, are allowed to disagree with our interpretations of it. And especially if you're someone who is much more familiar and knowledgeable on Sikhism and you're recognizing something that this text may have wrong or some nuance that we're missing, that would be a valid criticism that we'd be
yes,
open to hearing. Okay. But by all means, we are allowed
mm-hmm.
to find things that we disagree within every belief, right? And you know, I mentioned earlier as I was reading that it reminded me of communism.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it's not intrinsic to the communist project to make sure you lose your paranoid, every last bit of your paranoid shit and create gulags and murder everyone you think might be a reactionary.
Yes.
Okay. That disastrous inclination was born out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the sword and these elements that developed within Sikhism were because people were trying to murder them and kill them for trying these new beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
They initially, I highlighted early on, it was about let's help this oppressed motherfucker over here. Let's help these poor ass motherfuckers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but eventually it becomes, well, they're trying to kill us, so maybe we should stir some shit with a sword over here for a minute. And
Oh, absolutely.
so I, I mean, that's scary to me when you start, combining elements of weapons of death with religious inclination. That scares me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also think I'm reminded of one of the reasons why I love Malatesta so much as an anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
He is so keen to always emphasize not only it's a three-part plan, sort of his anarchist project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd be paraphrasing him, but in all decisions, not only do you have your contemporary dialectical material analysis,
Uh-huh.
you also have to incorporate your historical dialectic, your dialectical historicism in concert with your contemporary dialectical materialism, but
Yes.
also in concert with never losing sight of the long term end goal,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that your understanding of the past, in congruence with your critique of your contemporary conditions, is in congruence, and what you do with that and what tactics you take on what your praxis becomes does not interfere or cause problems with your long term goals.
Exactly.
That's not a religious notion. I think that's a very scientific mathematical equation, sort of, that's intrinsic to anarchism, especially Malatesta's anarchism and my anarchism as a direct extension. But that's what pops into mind when I read those passages about this sort of militant manifestation in the third wave of Sikhism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so quick to condemn it,
Oh, I'm
right?
right
I
there with
mean,
you.
I'm very apprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
It scares me.
Mm-hmm.
And I make no compunctions with that. I make no apologies for, especially as an anarchist, why involving mechanisms of death with religious inclination.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be very hyper attuned and critical of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know,
And lastly, and I promise I'll let you go now
you're
because I know
good.
you have some thoughts. But I assert that the greatest friend to a communist, especially if you have a premier and as an anarchist, obviously I have a problem with the single authoritative figure. Okay, but that makes us the most adept critique or comradely critique of that should be the anarchist because we are by definition so apprehensive towards any type of abuse of power or power singularly around one person or one belief, right? It's not an outright condemnation. It's because I can see as an anarchist where there's places where we need an authority, where we need a person who is the expert on this thing to sort of take charge of this one specific thing. But as an anarchist, I'm going to be hypercritical of their methods and their tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that same thing happening here, sort of in my personal critique of this manifestation in Sikhism.
Oh yeah. You know, completely agree. I think that you're always going to have subject matter experts. You're always going to have those that we consider an authority on a topic or a subject, and we're going to need those leaders regardless of what future we may find ourselves in, society and culture. But I think the difference, the key difference with what anarchists want is that these authorities and these subject matter experts don't have a boot on our collective necks telling us what to do. We have that collective say in maybe this isn't the way we should go. We need to talk about this because it affects all of us. And to your point with the trend with Sikhism to become more militant, I think you and I both are in agreement that an oppressed group, sometimes when your back is against the wall and you've tried every other thing, you've got to fight back.
That's right.
I truly believe I don't believe in the notion of when they go low, we go high. That never works. And this is from a former pacifist, and we can talk about that in another podcast if you want. But I am very much of the opinion that when they go low, make sure you take some of their teeth out with your knee. Um, they won't do it again. And I understand the idea of when you're an oppressed group and you're wanting not only to protect yourself, but more importantly, you're wanting to protect your friends and family, or those others that you consider your family, because they are in that camaraderie of that oppressed group. Absolutely. And so that's never a thing like you shouldn't do that. You should always be willing to have the shit beat out of you or be killed and have your friends killed because that's being peaceable. No, that's not what I'm saying. And what I think, to your point, what you're saying too is that whenever you mix a religious belief and ordain it with a sword or an implement of war or weaponry, you are now equating any type of violence or act of aggression towards a perceived threat or enemy as God ordained, and that is a dangerous recipe, and that is why we are in the shape we're in a lot of ways in the world now, especially within the structures of the United States and our imperial march throughout the entire world.
Yeah, and it's like I have every right to disagree with basic tenets of Sikhism, but it has every fucking right to exist in the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
And who the fuck am I to try and stop them from believing that and perpetuating that in their life? I have no right to fucking do that to them. And if I do, yeah, bad on me for the sword across my fucking neck.
Yeah.
Unless they're trying to force that, if they're bringing their sword to force Sikhism into my life, well, then fuck you.
Yeah.
But I'm not hearing that. I don't see that. And who the hell am I to stifle their self determination
Mm-hmm.
and their right to exist as Sikhs
No.
and believe things that I may disagree with? I have no right to that. I mean, I don't want to sound like Go America or Praise America because its foundations are disgusting and racist and genocidal. But that notion that of the First Amendment that the government will not establish a religion. This is important, man.
Mm.
This is really fucking crucially important. And what it means is they can do their trip, man. And don't get up in their shit. And you know what? Hey, if they're gonna pull out, if you want to go and oppress these Sikhs and tell them they got to be evangelicals, or you're gonna fuck them up if they don't evangelical, and they take a sword to your shit, sorry.
You done
You know, they
fucked up.
told you straight up. They were stirring water and telling you that's what they were gonna do if you try to fuck with their shit.
Mhm. I would completely agree. And I think that that's
I hate that. I hate that we live in a fucking planet where that reality has to be a thing. That I hate that Mao was justified in some of his paranoia over reactionaries. I think he went way far. Okay. But there were real reactionaries that wanted to destroy his revolution. There were real capitalist interests that wanted to destroy his revolution. Same with Stalin. I'm not justifying Stalin's gulags, man. Man with mustache was fucked up.
yes.
And his writings on the national question, I think, were brilliant.
Hmm.
But that said, I'm, again, this is why I think anarchists are so important to all these things, because the last thing, Malatesta says, we anarchists don't want to emancipate the people. We want the people to emancipate themselves.
Yes.
Don't want to control people. Don't want to tell what people to believe. I want people to find self-empowerment however they find it, as long as it doesn't, and if they find self-empowerment, I think anarchists are good critiques of that, holding it in check, right?
100%.
That symbiotic thing,
Hmm.
right? My respect for your right to exist. Yeah.
And
There's a little bit more here about Sikh scriptures. I think we probably said enough. Um, I highly suggest people, you could probably, I don't know if you could find this online, or if you want to learn more about Sikhism, I don't know, maybe we'll find some videos for a documentary too and drop it in the description for this. But
or
unless you have any other thoughts on this topic, maybe we could debunk some evangelicals.
yes, the only thing I have to say is that you know, getting a book and learning about it is great, but an even better way to do it is to befriend someone that practices this belief system. And it's on purpose, the world that we live in today with capitalism, and that we stay behind our phones, or we're on YouTube, like, what we're doing now. You're watching us from a screen. And we're not actually having a conversation together. Technology is a beautiful thing because it can bring us together. Like, we're states away, you and I, but it also can be an ugly thing that is instrumental in making us feel isolated, alone, and making us fear the other. And so the best way to combat that is sometimes put down that phone, shut down that laptop, and go and meet some people and learn who they are, learn what they're about, befriend them if you can. And that's a book is a great thing. I'll never stop advocating for you to read, to learn, to listen to podcasts or listen to lectures and teachers, but to get that. There's something unique about actually befriending someone that is an adherent to a belief system or a faith system, and that is you're going to learn more with them just in a few minutes of being their friend than you could from any lecture or a podcast or a book can teach you about it. That's all.
Absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that, I think, is that, in Western, obviously our audience is primarily a Western based audience. And you understand, listener, that there are just vast nuances in Christian thinking and within each sect, within evangelicalism, within the Baptist tradition, within the Episcopalian tradition. There are subsects and ideologies and varied levels of devotion to, like, let's be careful to not assume that every Sikh is 100% stringently devoted to what we read here. They, as individuals, I'm sure, I don't mean to speak for Sikhs, this is just an assumption, but I assume that they have their own various interpretations or at least levels of devotion to the religion. So let's not make assumptions about these people as we befriend them.
Mm-hmm.
Let them sort of inform you what they're, if they're even interested in talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
They may not want to talk to you about it, and that's okay too, right?
Absolutely.
But I think just the initial thing of going, hey, I'm fascinated by what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's neat. And I'd like to learn more about that. I think that's only a positive thing in
Oh
the end.
yeah.
Mm.
And what a way to subvert the narrative and the way that our government and our leaders want us to be by
The way the
actually.
capitalist ruling class uses religion to
Yes.
divide us
Yes.
and to keep
Good
us
job.
separated and angry and fighting amongst each other so that we don't
Yes.
rise up and overthrow their fucking power.
That's right, and that we're actually looking to become a friend for someone because we want to learn more about them, or that we can find common ground, instead of what can I gain from this friendship, as if it's an opportunity to elevate your status. That mindset of that we find ourselves here, especially in the West, that let's become friends with somebody simply because what it can do for me personally. We've got to break away from that, and being able to just befriend someone because we're truly interested in who they are and what they're about. That's, God, what a beautiful thing, and what a countercultural thing. And it's fucking sad that that has to be said. But the fact remains is that let's try that, because that's the best way to uh, kill and combat some of this bullshit that's out there.
Absolutely. Speaking of bullshit that's out there.
Yes.
Evangelical Debunk. Oh my goodness. What was the title of this video we had picked again? Just the title alone was
Yeah.
uh Angels will remove every wicked ballot.
Every wicked ballot. Let me see here.
So this is from was it Right Wing Watch that captured this
Yes,
clip?
Right Wing Watch. Try saying that like 7 times fast.
And not to be confused with an amazing channel called Reich Wing Watch.
That's
Also very good.
I'll have
If
to
you
check
want
that out.
a really strong, a bunch of really great documentaries on the history of libertarianism and the rise of far right, Reich Wing Watch is an amazing channel.
Oh wow, okay.
Oh my God. So I found them because years ago, I got up in Millie from InfoWars face at a rally in Berkeley where she was spreading a bunch of bullshit and propaganda, and I confronted her and confronted Alex on Pizzagate and shit. And he boosted the video from Reichling Watch.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's like, wow, which got it like 150,000 freaking views. It's pretty cool. But so that made me dive into his channel, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing channel. But that's not what we're watching. This is Right Wing Watch.
Right Wing Watch.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if I can pull this bad boy up real quick.
And Lord, for these elections that are remaining, these states that remaining in Congress, Lord, in the House, and Lord, the 30-something elections that are yet to be called, Lord, I pray in the Spirit.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there for just a
Yeah.
second.
Go ahead.
How? Yeah.
There we go.
But that's beautiful. Absolutely. What better way to get your point across than to speak in a language that no one's understanding? And, maybe that's how you recruit new followers, by speaking gibberish to maybe the toddlers or infants that are out there.
So let's clarify. So this is an old tradition with evangelicalism. It's called speaking in tongues.
Yes.
Now, so in evangelical circles, there are sort of steps you take. Now, the first and primary, most important step that any evangelical can take is to become born again. Mm-hmm. And the process to become born again is you say the sinner's prayer. So it's a variation of, I accept that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, that died on the cross for my sins and rose again on the third day. And I ask Jesus to come live in my heart, forgive me of all my sins, and be my Lord and Savior and Father and God going forward. And or some variation there, but those are the main tenets, the main points. Correct me if I'm wrong, Father Fury.
You are correct.
And at that point, having done that, having made that declaration, you are born again and will enter into heaven forever and ever and avoid hanging out with like Jeff Hanneman from Slayer and like Freddie Mercury and like a bunch of dope ass people like Malatesta and shit in some place called hell. But that's not the end for evangelicals. There are what later is then after that. Now that's all you need.
Next year, Aaron.
But that's all you need, just to be clear. That's all you need. You're good. If you say the sinner's prayer, you are born again. But, I mean, are you baptized in the Holy Spirit, though? Now, water baptism is in there too, but it's really kind of an afterthought almost. It's not really, evangelicals do it, but it's definitely not as important as being born again and baptized in the Holy Spirit. Now, Christians believe in the Trinity, right? God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So the baptism in the Holy Spirit, now Jesus lives in you, but the Holy Spirit doesn't live in you. So you gotta get him in there. Or her, who knows, depending on your Gnostic language.
Greek is pneuma, and so that is feminine. So,
or it's a dove. I don't know. A dove flies down your throat.
There you go.
But the evidence of the supposed legitimacy of your baptism in the Holy Spirit is you speak in other tongues. And in the Bible, I can't remember. Maybe you remember the specific verses, Father, but there are verses in the New Testament that they spoke in languages, but people in these verses recognize it. Oh, he was from Assyria, but here he is speaking Greek. Or right?
That's the book of Acts, and they were like the Spirit descended upon them like flames on their forehead, and they were able to speak in all the tongues to where everyone in the diaspora was able to understand. And again, that's Father Fury paraphrasing there. But
and the other element of this is, thank you for sharing that. But the other element of this is it's supposedly a perfect language that God understands and the devil doesn't. So evangelicals believe there's a lot of power. So that's why she's doing this, right? She's like, okay, God, make sure that the voting with ballots, they think that that's elevating. I was taught, I guess, and put it this way, I was taught that, okay, I'll pray for the thing that I desire from God, whatever it is I'm asking for. And I'll think of that, but then I'll say a bunch of words in tongues that I don't understand. Right? But God knows what I'm saying. And my prayer becomes pure at that point. It's not tainted by my sinful, ungodly nature and my selfishness and my wickedness, and right? It becomes this pure prayer that in the ears, sweet song in God's ears.
Oh yes.
But it really just sounds like variations on bubble gum from the 80s. Hubba bubba bubble gum, bubba, bubblicious.
Bubba yum.
Yeah. So that's what she's doing. And people who don't understand it, I totally get why they just think it is the most bizarre ass shit ever. But that's where the arrogance of it, the strength they boost it with.
Yes.
They really think, man, I just said a perfect prayer to God. That's that thing we were talking about earlier about that, thinking that you have that direct connection, that perfect, line with God. Scary.
Yeah, and I think that, what you said was spot on, is that I do believe that there are still some, I'm sure, but I think at some point that there might have been a sincerity to this language that is incoherent and inconceivable to us, and they're trying to express the purity of what they're trying to say to God, and it's just coming out as what sounds like babbling. And yeah, I'm sure that there is some sincerity there for some folks, and that might have been how it started out. But you see these folks on here, and I know this sounds
Totally
very judgmental, but it actually becomes a competition. And I can attest to this as a person that was raised in the evangelical circles. It's a competition about who is the holiest, and if you can speak in tongues and you can just go on for hours with this incoherent babbling, then you are obviously holier than that person on the pew beside you that wasn't able to accomplish such a holy and angelic feat. And so,
exuding the authority of God.
The authority of God.
All right, let's listen to more of her babbling.
Perfect.
Again, this is called Angels Will Remove Every Wicked Ballot. And it's mostly been her babbling tongues.
Mhm.
And I think she mentioned ballots. Go ahead and start it from the beginning. We're only 16 seconds in.
Yeah, let's kick this off.
And Lord, for these elections that are remaining, these states that remaining in Congress, Lord, in the House, and Lord, the 30-something elections that are yet to be called, Lord, I pray in the Spirit. You know what you learned last week? Eregino, aindere la crede, indos declara, inonomastomble brande stegle greinama. Ningle crota eroba cone vresto den aids de sia la creste merasteno insteno arreste cano egle grondele eramadine etstone aideticano etstole anole clibra, but you are a dosta cara de bastayata. And you said, Lord, when you catch a thief, make him pay 7 times. Make him pay 7 times. Make him pay 7 times.
That got to do with
Make
ballot.
him pay 7 times. Make him pay 7 times. Make him pay 7 times.
Okay, but
Lord,
you'd have to
I call
catch
in that
someone
number
doing
7,
mail
the number of perfection, God's holy number.
to punish him 7
In the
times.
name of Jesus, we
When you
call
catch a
in
thief,
a stay la cor
yeah, she still has
and
the job.
a result of holy proportion, a result of holy and godly heavenly proportion. I thank you for angel intervention. Angels, Lord, angels if
Get that booger.
necessary.
Oh, yes.
Removing every
Get that snot for
removing
Jesus.
every wicked ballot, removing
holy
every
exercise.
fraudulent
Remove
ballot,
every wicked ballot. There, she
remove
said it.
them, bringing them to nothing, erase them. They are nothing. They are nothing.
Oh, they're nothing. The wicked ballots
They
are nothing.
You are
Yes.
bringing those to nothing.
Hababa shadana
Lies,
habada.
deceit, nothing. They come to nothing in Jesus'
They
name.
come to nothing, bro.
Well, I love that
Wow.
you had the drummer that really started trying to emphasize there at the end. Like, let me get that last little part. Check out the drummer on the
Nothing
right
in
hand.
Jesus'
He's like,
name.
yes,
Boom for Jesus.
the emphasis. Oh my gosh, yeah. Let me.
You know, when I was in my dad's church, I remember him
that I will not let the evil
talking very specifically about why he didn't have an American flag in his church because it's idol worship.
Yeah.
This was like, to me, and that wasn't just my dad's church. That was really common. Pastors, we're not talking so blatantly and constantly about politics. Evangelicals have always railed against Washington, okay, because it's secularism and it's the devil and it's to steer away from it and it's, God's laws above Washington.
Yeah.
That was, when I was young, that was my understanding. They were all Republicans. They were all full-on conservatives,
Yes.
but they were absolutely not telling you who to vote for and not vote for. And it was controversial to have a flag. Some churches did have the U.S. flag in it. Some didn't. And, I think about I kneel for the, what is it?
Stand for the flag, kneel for the cross.
That's the flag before the cross in that statement.
Oh yeah.
To me, if that, I was taught in evangelical community, that's idol worship, that's putting something before God. to say it first. Stand for the flag. Why would you stand for the flag before you kneel for the cross? If anything, it should be the other way. That always just stood out to me, that like, this is a real change. Well, look, not everyone, but so evangelicalism. Let me give you a quick little background history. So correct me if I'm wrong. So you have Pentecostalism, which predates evangelicalism. And Pentecostalism is this embrace of these sort of gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, prophesying, healing the sick, right? There's a real preoccupation. That's what not Protestantism. I just said the word. Pentecostalism was. There were groups like the Jansenists and the Convulsionaires. I actually was in a band called the Convulsionaires, but these were early Pentecostals. So evangelicals come along under primarily Amy Semple McPherson, who was a primary early proponent of evangelicalism. She's established the Foursquare Church. But it was the embrace of Pentecostalism, but a hardcore embrace of this against the otherism. This was really important, against the world, right? Anything that was not of Jesus and not of the gifts of the Spirit is of the world. And it's a real preoccupation with being against the world. So the gifts of the Spirit kind of take a little bit of a backseat of being against Washington and the influence of the devil and governments and all that. But now that's given over to, well, the Democrats are evil and are the world, and because the Republicans, since the 80s especially, with the Christian Coalition and the moral majority, Ralph Reed and these people, and of course 700 Club and Pat Robertson gives way to what we see, this Victory Network person, which is this is what's his face, his network. Victory is run by that motherfucker. He does the buckets of gruel now.
Yes, Jim Baker.
No, not Jim Baker. It's the other guy. God damn it. The dark-haired guy, skinny ass face.
There are so
He's
many
been around
out there.
There's so many of them. But that's his network is Victory. And that's millions and millions of viewers to that Victory Network stuff. And it's a complete, fuck evangelicalism in my estimation anyway. Oh, yeah. I think it's rooted in racism and a tacit fucking approval and apologia for systemic racism in America. That's always been a part of it. And it's just completely awash in the groomer language and bullshit now. And, the anti-trans stuff. And again, that was gibberish. What's even, this is the Evangelical Debunk. But what did she even say? She just said that ballots were going to be evil. But they don't exist.
Yes, the angels will cast them out. And so we can look at it two ways. Either she's not quite as powerful as she thinks she is in God's eyes, and so the prayer failed. Or the prayer was successful, and she just happens to be on the wrong side.
And if the prayer is successful, she doesn't like that because those Victory Network people are all in, actually, dude from Telltale, excuse me, Owen from Telltale. It's a great YouTube channel.
Yeah.
He does debunks of a lot of these Victory Network evangelicals, a lot. And they are really all in. There's a huge thread within that community of that Trump is literally a messiah.
Yes.
Donald Trump carries the prophetic seal of the calling of God. Donald Trump is the Messiah of America.
This is Shane Vaughn, Pastor Shane Vaughn, pastor of a megachurch, fawning over his Messiah, Donald Trump. There is a real contingent of megachurch pastors out there, televangelists, and evangelicals more generally, who have turned Donald Trump into a full-blown Messiah figure for their movement. He is effectively the second coming of Jesus for these people.
That's the language that they're using now, not a Messiah. So they say that, okay, Jesus came down, he made the covenant with Israel. That's offensive to Jewish people, I know. But that Donald Trump has made the covenant with America.
Okay.
And that's a complete departure from evangelicalism to declare some president. I mean, that is hardcore blasphemy and heresy, right? To declare a man as another Messiah. There's nothing in evangelical history or in New Testament teachings that we should be expecting another Messiah. Whether you believe that Jesus was Messiah or not is irrelevant. The New Testament assertion is that Messiah will return. There's no.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's evangelicalism was founded upon heretical thoughts from Christian texts. So why stop now? I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's in keeping true to the tradition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Why not just continue to pile nonsense onto nonsense, and get as far away from the source text as you possibly can, because maybe one day you'll loop right back around to it. Who knows? Maybe it is just a full circle.
No, a lot of these different evangelicals, especially on the Victory Network, they don't hold Bibles. No. They don't hold a Bible while they're preaching. They might. Sometimes there's one over on the podium.
I lost you. There's a little bit of lag. We will wait for you to return, my friend.
But when I'm here, you're frozen.
Okay, we're back.
Now I see you.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. What was I going to say? I lost the train of thought because we froze up, but it's okay. I think the last thing that I would say on that is to be aware that, especially with these Victory Network evangelicals and their thing about Trump and Messiah, there's a lot of other elements of their core belief structure that reminds me a lot of like Church of the Creator and Aryan Nations versions of Jesus from the 80s. And like the evangelical community and mainstream circles of republicanism, America First and all that stuff, and Great Replacement Theory, that's not new. That's all what Dan Butler was doing with the Aryan Nations and these people who were reading Turner diaries shit back in the day.
And then the follow-up to that by I can't even remember his name, and it was started with an S. Turner Diaries, and then you had
the Siege guy?
Siege, yes.
James Mason? Yeah, don't read Siege. Actually, Spencer Sunshine, if you follow him on Twitter, fantastic anti-fascist researcher, is in the process of finally writing a proper book treatment on James Mason.
Wow.
That's going to be a fantastic work. I'm pretty sure, based on his Twitter output, that he's getting pretty close to the end because it makes him miserable. Understandably so.
No doubt. I mean, these people are miserable. Let's be honest. To think that their privileged way of life is, somehow by giving people equal rights that they're somehow not going to have the same rights that they currently hold. Is a threat to their very way of being. God, what a miserable and sad life that must be. But
let's continue to make them feel threatened in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Let's
because it is under threat, and it should be. And we could talk and we can go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But I think we debunked it because I don't know that she really said much.
No, I was expecting something a little more, but yeah, I think we did too. But I think to your point before we got kind of like paused there for a second was that you were talking about you don't really see these people with Bibles.
Oh, that's right. You don't. And that's the way, that's what church was. Usually one or two verses, and the pastor would kind of focus on that and then find other verses to corroborate his interpretation of that verse. But it was really rooted in let's study these scriptures, these words in this book. That's not it. I mean, they might loosely quote a verse here and there, but they're not walking around holding that Bible in their hand. We called them Bible thumpers because they're literally taking the Bible and thumping it and going, open your Bibles to this page and open your Bibles to that page. That's not what's going on. So who'd you vote for? And you better vote this way because they're all groomers and they want to make you trans because of the critical race theories and Satan and whatever.
Absolutely. And be sure to join our father-daughter dance this Sunday night, after our potluck meeting. Good God. But I think that brings up a final point for me was that, in my naivete with getting an education in this, I thought that, God, if I can show these people and like really kind of talk to them and say, no, this is actually what the Bible says, then maybe I would be able to convince some of these folks that the way they're thinking about things and the way they're interpreting Scripture or their belief system in God and Jesus is incorrect. That's not the
Absolutely.
case. That's not the case because they're not even interested in that. Turns out that that's just the thinly veiled cloak behind their racism and their desire to oppress anyone that isn't them. They hide it behind that thinly veiled cloak of religion and belief.
And the better you understand the actual words and teachings, the better you can spot their heretical grift and their bullshit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the empowerment I hope that we can share with people. It's not about, go get saved and say the sinner's prayer and be a Jesus person. It's about understanding where these people who purport to speak for him depart from his actual teachings. Whether you even agreed with them or not is irrelevant, but at least actually understand what he said,
Okay,
and because the worst disgusting fucking person in the world who's blatantly lying to you while telling you that they speak for God. I'm far more forgiving of people who just get it wrong, but really are trying earnestly and believe. And I'm more forgiving than this scumbag. Haba baba haba shaba. The vote ballots were wicked and evil. Higa diga biga shiga. Make sure, oh power of God for the ballots. And I abolish the ballots and the wickedness of the voting ballot. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Go eat shit till you choke. Just fuck off.
Yeah, if there's anything that that I hope that we can impart throughout this entire series of podcasts is that God, whatever you want to call God, doesn't need anybody to speak for them, and you don't need anybody to speak for you. You have your own voice. Stand up, be heard, be who you are.
I'm with that 100%. I think that's a great cap to a fucking cool ass first episode. Father Fury, this was so fun. I think this was a great first start.
Yeah, thank you so much for, thinking of me when you thought of this podcast, and man, it's just an honor to be here and, just shooting the shit with you about things that, whether you believe in them or not, they are integral to the human experience and are integral to how we understand the world we find ourselves in, along with the political systems we find ourselves in.
Absolutely. And it's a real honor to be able to do this with you, because for you to fundamentally understand, I didn't even have to explain. You knew when I said, let's do a podcast about religions. You knew where I was coming from on it. You understood, no, obviously I'm a real anarchist. I'm not here trying to push religions onto people. I am not telling people what to believe. I just would like to see people feel free to explore new ideas, new ways of thinking, and see what it means to them and make their own decisions based on the facts themselves, right? And maybe give people a little permission to, if you have the time, if you have the privilege, look into religions and, fill your brain with more knowledge. And it's only, again, like we said in the very beginning, it's about inclusion. It's about accepting the diversity of the human condition. If we as leftists want to mean that seriously, if we want to accept the religion, immigrants and refugees from diverse cultures, well, we have to have at least some base level of respect for their divergent or differing belief structures and theories and religious ideas, right? So, how fun. And I can't wait to learn more about other religions as we do this too.
I hear you. That's going to be the best part of this, is learning and discovering some of the lesser known or less popular beliefs and religions that just aren't quite as prevalent here in our small part of the world.
And I should just say, and this will be my last thought, we are going to cover belief structures that we're going to be right off the bat. Okay, this thing is a huge fucking pile of dog shit. And this is where it starts and why nothing is redeemable. We're going to do those ones too. It's not going to be all glowing just because it's a religion or a belief structure. All of a sudden, we're just going to be like, oh, wow, did you hear about this one? There's some real shit religions out there, man. You know? And I have no compunction with pointing out when they're shit religions. I mean, we're doing a regular segment called the Evangelical Debunk. So there you go. So, hey, a rudimentary peanut cup of coffee. By the way, it's so apropos. It's when you are a Martian church.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
This has been Religions and the Left with Father Fury and Reverend Aaron. Much love to you, comrade. Until next month.